Pretty regularly, I get asked about the word motivation. What is it? Where does it come from? How do you generate more of it? And how do you keep it going when you need it? And people say to me all the time, well, Joseph, you seem to get a lot of stuff done. You always seem motivated. You always seem on top of your game. How do you stay motivated? And as a matter of fact, I've even been accused of being a motivational speaker, of which I'm not. And I'll tell you about that here in just a little bit. But here's what I want to do. I want to show you how, if you want to answer those questions, what it is, where it comes from, how to get more of it, and how do you use it. But I'm also going to give you something that you can do so that it becomes part of you. And what I mean by that is this is something that I call Neuro Encoding. And Neuro Encoding is quite simply the process of programming oneself, or others, if you will, if you're an influencer, to automatically default to their best behavior. And here's what that means. To automatically default to your chosen best behavior. So if you procrastinate, or if you hesitate, or you suffer from anxiety or fear or anything like that, that's not where you want to be. And so if you ask yourself, how would I rather be? I want to be, ambitious, and I want to get up early, I want to stay up late. Those are behaviors. But those behaviors are always preceded by a feeling, an emotion. And so you can literally you can decide what behavior you want to have, which is going to, also be deciding on what emotions that you want to have in any given moment. And then program yourself so that when something shows up, and it always does, when something shows up, you automatically default to your best. Now, this is a science. And so because it's a science, like I said, I'm not going to just tell you something, because knowledge is not power. You know that. Knowledge is only potential power. I want to give you something that you can do so you can embed, so that you can encode yourself to default to your best behavior. And this isn't going to be just goal setting or anything like that. So first off, here's what happens to most people, is they depend on motivation to keep them going. But what happens is once they get started, I know you've been there, I know I have. You get started on something, and once you get started on it, stuff happens. You get distracted, things come into our lives, whatever. And we run out of steam. We run out of motivation, if you will, and we start looking around, well, what's going to get me excited? And oftentimes, just the fact that you're doing something different, which is harder, which is part of the deal. If you want something, you got to be not just willing to do something, you got to do something. And so you may be motivated in the very beginning. You may set a goal. You may say, I want to make $1 million, or I want to lose X amount of weight, or I want to get in this body shape, or I want to start this business. I want to do all those things. And then you say, I will do that. Because in the moment you're motivated, in the moment you're looking at what's possible, in the moment you're looking at what's outside of yourself, and you're going, well, I can do this because, if I do this, then I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that kind of thing. And in that moment, it feels real good. There's not a one of us that is not motivated to lose weight or start a diet or start a business or whatever when the pain is there or the frustration is there. You look at ourselves and you try to fit yourself into your jeans or your outfit, and it doesn't fit because you've gained a bit of weight, and you go, that's it, I'm going to start my diet tomorrow. Or you may go, okay, that's it, I'm tired of being broke, I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to study this type of business, I'm going to start this, I will do this. That's called willpower. But willpower doesn't get anything done, because just because you will do something doesn't mean that you are going to do it or that you do it. And so willpower is out the window. Willpower is kind of just the excitement or the spark, if you will. But I want to teach you about motivation. First off, motivation is outside of you. Motivation is you see something or you hear something and it makes you feel good in that moment, and you feel motivated in that moment. But that's only temporary. And I want you to look at it like this. And it's just a metaphor. It's something that I call human physics. Physics is just the study of, if you will, the cause and effect of movement. You pull the string on this end, it's going to move on the other end. And so I call this emotional mechanics in human physics. When we move, when we do certain things, whether it's thinking or moving our body or whatever, there's going to be a result. And so in this case, I want you to look at what makes you do what you do ongoing, not just when you get motivated in that moment, not just when you do it, but what makes you keep going after that, is that you have what I call a compelling future or a carrot on the stick, if you will, something that's going to happen. But what happens is most people say, well, I just got to get motivated and I just got to get motivated. Well, listen, motivation is temporary. It is. It just gets you started. Once you look at it like this kind of physics. Look at your car engine. If you've got a gasoline car engine or an internal combustion engine, you have the engine which produces the power. You feed it the gas, you cool it with water, and it'll take you down the road, and it'll keep you going as long as it has gas and as long as it has water to cool it down, because internally it has everything that's happening, the mechanics, it has the electrical system that's going on, it's got the valves that are moving up and down, the pistons, and all those things are working in concert to keep it going. Well, that's the same with you. Your heart beating, your nervous system, everything that's going on inside of you will keep you moving, to keep you doing things. That's called momentum, if you will. That'll keep you going. But you got to look at what gets you started. And just like in the car engine, what gets you started is there's this little motor called a starter motor. And the starter motor, all it does is it turns the engine over until the sparks start happening and everything, and then the starter disengages and you don't need the starter again until you turn the car off and you start it again and go on it and do it again. Years ago, one of my favorite cars of all times, I found this car out in the middle of a field. I found it was called a 1938 Plymouth Business Coupe. And I bought this car, and it had a starter in it. It was old-fashioned 1938, but what it also had was this little lever in the front that you could flip this lever up, and it had a crank that you could stick in, because if the starter failed, you could crank that car over by hand. And it was tough, but you could crank it over by hand and get it started. Why am I saying all of this? I want you to look at motivation as being your starter motor. And I want you to use your brain as if your starter motor, once your starter motor gets going, or if you have trouble getting that starter motor going, or it's failing you in the moment, you can use your brain as that crank to get it going. I know this is just a metaphor, but I want you to stay with me on this, because it's just like this. I want you to use motivation is the thing that just gets you going. It gets you excited. And so this is where I want you to alter your goal setting and your goal achieving process from what most people do. They say write down your goals and describe them and all of those things. Well, I say this is what's going to keep you going, because this is what's going to give you what's called momentum. And that is understanding the difference between motivation and empowerment. See, motivation is on the outside. You can create something. You can make a picture of something. You can set a goal on something. You can go, okay, well, this is great. I want this. That'll get you excited. And if you review it every day, it's going to get you excited in that day, and it's going to get you started. But what are you going to do when all hell breaks loose? What are you going to do when you got a bunch of stuff to do? What are you going to do when you get distracted? What are you going to do when you're not motivated? You want it to be encoded inside of yourself so that it happens automatically. And so how you do that is, number one, obviously that is always number one, is to set your goals. But don't just set your goals on the material things that you want. You see, people say, okay, I want $1 million, or I want this body, or I want this, and I want that. This is my goal. I'm going to have this business. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to do that. That's really great. But you know what goal they don't set? The emotional goal, the mental goal. And this is critical. This is critical because empowerment comes from the inside. You see, motivation comes from the outside. You see something, you look at it, and blah, 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 that's it. But empowerment comes from the inside, and empowerment is what keeps you going. So instead of answering the question when people say, well, Joseph, how do you stay motivated? I say, I don't. I stay empowered. I empower myself to keep on going. And how you do that is you write down the emotions that you're going to need to experience day by day to stay going. Excitement, joy, love, positive expectancy, all of those things. And you can fool yourself by just putting a smile on your face. Those need to be your goals as well. And I know this is different than what maybe you've been taught or have learned before, but the truth of the matter is this is the missing piece, if you will. And so you want to write down your goals, and then write down your goals and your goals of the material things that you want, or situations, circumstances, but then also write down the emotions that you need to accompany them. And I'm going to, like I said, I start you off with joy, happiness, excitement, courage, bravery, all those things. Just write them down. What you write is what you invite. Step number 2. Always come back to them every day. Because remember, we're going to be encoding ourselves. We're going to be encoding ourselves to automatically come back. And the best way, I shouldn't say the best way, but one of the most effective ways is through repetition, excitement, and praise. And so here's what the second step is. Schedule the review of those goals every day, several times a day. You know, when I want something, I will go, I'll use my phone, I'll tell Siri to remind me in an hour to review my goals. And here's what you do. So step number 2 is schedule review. Just put it in there. Step number 3 is when that alarm goes off. And I suggest let's do this for 10 days. You're going to watch what happens in 10 days. Your level of internal empowerment is going to go through the roof because we're conditioning ourselves. We're conditioning our psychology. And so step number 3 is what you're going to do is that when that alarm goes off, you grab that piece of paper and you look at your goals and you envision them, both of them. And I use money and weight loss and things like that and business and things like that because they're low-hanging fruit and everybody can understand that, but it's synonymous with everything, any and everything that you want. So you grab that piece of paper, you grab that phone, and you look at it, and you read it out loud. Now, if you know me from some of my other videos, you know that I say state it in the positive, on or before this date, and I say my name, will have this in my possession. And then I also say or starting now, I will have, and by the way, I'll imagine that, I'll see it, sometimes I'll put the picture on my wall or whatever it is. You know, I'm not going to go into those details, you can do that, you know that. But I'll also go, okay, well look, here's the emotions that I need to feel. And when I see joy on there, watch, I'm going to do joy. You do it in that moment, you put a smile on your face. When you see excitement, you just remember a time that you were excited. You squeeze your fist and you say yes, and you think about that. You just think about it because what you're doing is you're attaching that emotion to those goals. And when you do, you're literally rewiring your brain. You're creating new neuro associations inside your brain. It's like magic. And so you imagine yourself being joyful and you feel joy in that moment. Do it. Number 2, you imagine yourself being excited and you feel excited in that moment. Do it. All of the emotions that you put down there that are going to be necessary. And if you don't know what they are, you can model somebody else. I'm telling you what mine are. Joy, excitement, enthusiasm, positive expectancy. All of those things I put down and I just imagine them in that moment. And then at the end of it, step number 4, which is critical, and that is that you must praise yourself. Praise yourself. This is where most achievers fall down on the job. Praising yourself means to pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I did this. This is great. I'm awesome. Give yourself some sort of reward. Why? Let's go backwards up the ladder. Here's what happens. The reward, you know me, causes your body to release dopamine and endorphins, makes you feel good. As soon as that happens, your brain is going to go, oh, wait a minute. That feels good. What just happened? And what just happened was you read your goals and felt your goals. And then the brain goes, let's just do it again. And then guess what? You're programming yourself. You're embedding it. You're encoding your nervous system to do this automatically. So after a few days, when you don't have that list or whatever, and you think about what you want to do, then guess what? Automatically, dopamine release, endorphin release, oxytocin release, all that stuff. You feel good and you feel more excited about doing it. This is the reason why I can tell you unequivocally that I stay empowered. I get up in the morning, and I'm not saying this to brag or to boast. I'm just saying this, and that this is just how I roll. And it's not just me. I've taught hundreds and hundreds of thousands of other people, and now you get to do it as well. It's a do. It's what puts a smile on my face. It's what keeps me excited. It's that carrot on the stick. It's so that I don't have to motivate myself every time. It's so that when something happens, and it does, when something happens, I don't have to, work myself back up to it. I just automatically default to going, oh, this is going to be okay. You know why? Because that's part of the deal, and I'm more optimistic. And remember, optimism means that you're seeing more options. You see, you got a ton more options than a ton more great things to happen than bad things. When something happens that throws you off your game, you don't get a phone call, or you get turned down for something, or you miss something or whatever. In that moment, what happens is if you're pessimistic, then what happens is that's all you're thinking about. Pessimism means you got one option. And that option is your sympathetic nervous system, which means fight or flight, and you stay in that, you get worried, you go through all that stuff. But when you get optimistic, you get to go, okay, you get to all the things that you learn, not just from me, but from other people, you get to go, okay, well, this is only temporary, it's part of the job, it's part of this and everything. What else could I do? What should I do? How is this like this? How is like that? And your brain starts to look for other options, and then guess what? What? Smile on your face, and you tend to move in that direction. This is the difference between having to get yourself motivated and staying motivated. So let's go over the steps again. Step number 1, write your goals down. And individually, by the way, you get to have the car, the house, and all those things, but write down the car and what kind of car it is and what year it is and how much you're going to pay for it, and then go, this is the house that I want, and be as specific as you can about all those things. And then that's part A of step number 1. B is you're going to list the emotions that are going to be necessary for you to continue to keep on going. What are you going to need to do this? Courage, bravery, joy, happiness, all of those things. You do the research and do it, because the research, and as you search, you're rewiring your brain. Step number 2 is what you're going to do is you're going to schedule it. And this is part of it. And it's the reason why it is a step, because here's where people leave it out. Because most people will go, okay, that sounds good, Joseph, I'm going to do it. But if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. And your cell phone is the greatest scheduler on the book, because she will remind you. He will remind you. Beep, beep, beep. When that goes off, step number 3, grab your goals and read them out loud. Part A, the house, all of the things, all that stuff, because that is the motivation. That's going, oh gosh, that's the carrot on the stick. That's what I want. But then read out loud and experience those emotions. Joy, smile on your face, all that stuff. You know how to do this stuff. You're an expert at it. You've been doing it your whole life. And then step number 4, praise yourself. Then get up out of there and move on. I suggest you do this 3 or 4 times a day. It takes you maybe 10 minutes, if that. Maybe 5 minutes even to do that. To experience it, move on. You can't get it wrong. The only way you get it wrong is to not do it at all. And so this process is, like I said, it's a neuro encoding process. You are encoding yourself to default to this. You are training yourself to do this. This is the difference. Now, people, this is a process that I've given you, but other people, they don't have this process. They do it automatically. And I promise you this: when you are motivated, or when you are empowered and you don't go get it done, I promise you something like this has happened along the way. So really, really simple. Follow these steps. And remember, life is always, 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 not some of the time, not most of the time, all the time. Life is exactly what you dare to make it, and fortune favors the bold. So the trick to life is to boldly step up and dare to make your life magnificent. I hope you don't stay motivated. I hope you get empowered. Do those steps. Crank that engine, and I'll see you at the top.